So we have today the speaker for our first session, Dr. Sarika Khushlani Solanki from University of West Virginia, United States. Sarika is a very dear friend of mine, and we have done our engineering together. So I'm glad to have her with me over here when she agreed to join this program as a speaker. Sarika, I welcome you on behalf of this program and on behalf of my institute, MANIT. So I'll just would like to introduce Sarika to you all. Dr. Sarika received a PhD degree in electrical and computer engineering from Mississippi State University, USA in 2006. She is currently an associate professor in Lane Department of Computer Science and Electrical Engineering at West Virginia University, Morgantown, West Virginia. Prior to that, she worked for Open Systems International, Minneapolis, as a senior engineer for 3 years. She is an NSF Career Awardee and a Stephen Research and editor of IEEE Transactions on Smart Grid and MBPI Energy's Journal. Her research interests are smart grid, microgrids, big data, and power system optimization and control. Dr. Sarika is also a senior member of IEEE. We are privileged to have you here with us, Sarika. We welcome you all.
Priyanka. And good morning, everyone. And Priyanka, just one thing. If
Yeah.
you have a chat message, okay, I think I can see it. Yes. So if I do a full screen, most probably I may not be able to see the chat screen. So I will increase it as much as I can.
Okay. Sarika, I am muting everyone's mic so that you
Okay.
can present. Yes, Sarika. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am able to hear you. And if anybody has any questions, then please write it in the chat window because I like it to be interactive. So since it is an online webinar kind of thing, I think I will appreciate if you write it in chat window or you can unmute yourself and ask me questions. Okay. So this way, I mean, at least I'm sure I will be sure that you are going through it and you are understanding each part of it. Okay. So okay, so I think my chat window is on now and I will start. So my topic here is data mining in smart power grids, and I will be presenting mostly on data mining basics, okay, how it came into existence, and then why we are using these data excavation methods, and then I will talk about the disturbance event identification using data mining. So its applications. So out of that, I will be discussing two applications. One is the detection of any event, and the other is finding the location where that event has started. Okay. And then I will discuss. I will go through conclusions, and then some of my publications I'll present there. So since it is a 1.5 hour session, this is the first time I'm giving a presentation for 1.5 hours. It is normally 50 minutes. So I will go slowly, and I think this will be a good chance for me to have some audience participation also. Okay. So what I'm trying to say here is that the power systems are actually rapidly changing, as you all might be aware. And I think from yesterday's presentation, I was not there for day before yesterday's presentation, but yesterday's presentation, I think Dr. Tripta Thakur, she went through a very high level view of what entails in this IoTs. Okay, so what are they, and how various players are participating in this, and how it is fitting inside the power system environment. And then I think Priyanka went more in details on applications and things related to what are smart grids, how IoTs are part of this smart grids. And then she also discussed more about what is a microgrid, and she went into some part of the distribution systems also, so like microgrids, and then a local controller, and what is a decentralized controller, and all that. So mine is mostly related, the topic here is mostly related to transmission systems. So the same things that I will be talking here in transmission systems can also be applied in distribution systems. Okay. So, so don't think that, okay, this is a transmission system and it is not of interest because I am working in distribution systems. But these same methodologies can be applied there. Okay, and we have started applying these methodologies in distribution systems. So, so you know that power systems are changing. There is lot of integration of renewable sources. So there is only one state in US which has 100% renewable penetration, and that is Hawaii. Okay, and they have 100% renewable sources, but then they are facing a lot of problems. So currently, when I was in IEEE PES general meeting this last summer, and people from there presented, and they said that they have to retire equipments very soon nowadays because of the changing, because of the variability in the renewable sources. They are actually they are retiring transformers. The age has become half that was previously. Okay, so this is a big challenge. Actually, the equipment is a big challenge. And then there are other challenges, like if hybrid electric vehicles come into picture, then here in US they do not have good infrastructure of charging. Okay, and when they are charging, how do you know that how many vehicles are charging at which location? Because the grid is not designed in a way that you can overload it anytime, anywhere. Okay, so that is another challenge. So the renewable sources are causing challenges. The hybrid electric vehicles are causing challenges, and then you are they are also dealing with this demand response. So previously, customers used to say that, okay, you are charging us money and we are paying it, but we have no control of how we are utilizing our electricity. So that is why, and also to reduce peak load, they thought that it will be mutually beneficial if we introduce a scheme where we give price incentive to the customers so that they don't use it at peak time, and the customer is happy because they can use electricity at a time when it is not a peak time. Okay, so they have to pay less money for that. So that is why it works both ways. So now demand response is there. There is hybrid electric vehicles. There are renewable sources. So these three are very dynamic. Okay, the grid is not the same as it is before because these dynamics have been introduced. So we can deal with these dynamics if we make use of the technological breakthroughs. Okay? These technological breakthroughs are because of the low cost of high speed communication. So you know 4G network, okay? So the cost of 4G is very less, but the cost of 5G is more. Okay, but these high speed communications previously they were not available, but now they are available. Okay, and then we have larger storage spaces nowadays. So we have supercomputing power. Okay, and and so we have bigger computers, we have bigger storage spaces. We also have clouds now that we can buy that much storage space into the cloud. Okay, and then in West Virginia we have two big supercomputers, and then we each faculty is allotted some space in that supercomputer, so we can run these data analysis in that computer. Okay, and then we have greater internet bandwidths and all that. So to solve these, so we have problems, we have technological breakthroughs. Okay, so can we solve these problems using these technological breakthroughs? Yes, if we have the data for it. Okay, and how do we get that data? We can get that data by the smart meters and the advanced metering infrastructure which are being utilized, which are being installed at the utilities. So in US, we do not have those many smart meters in place that the analysis becomes linear, that you do not have to do state estimation anymore. So if you have more meters, you know voltage, and you also know the power flow at each and every bus in the system. Okay. So if you have more meters, there is no need for a state estimation solution. You know the state at each and every node, each and every location. Okay. And so that is why, but we do not have those many smart meters installed as of yet. But as many meters there are installed, we have these phasor measurement units. So these meters are getting the data at at many samples per second. Okay, so now that these samples are coming in, utilities don't know how to use these samples, how to use this data. Data is coming, data is getting collected. Okay, but there are no algorithms that can use this data. Okay, so so that was a high level view. Now, what are the new technologies? This will give you a visualization of the technologies. So this is a phasor measurement unit. Okay, and then we have these AMIs. Okay, and then we have wind generators, and then we have high performance computing. So this is supercomputers. We have communication technologies. We even have big battery storages nowadays. Okay, not enough, but you cannot have, I mean, you cannot have enough because the research lacks in this battery storage. Okay, and there is lot of money being dedicated here for battery storage research, how to make batteries that can last longer and that can be smaller in size. Okay, and then we have these power electronic inverters because of these renewable generators. Okay, as Priyanka talked yesterday, that you can have a DC grid or you can have an AC grid, and say you have if you have these generators, so these are like DC generators, then you have to convert it into AC. So you have these inverters in between. Okay, and these inverters do not serve only the purpose of DC to AC, but these inverters actually do the entire controlling. Okay, and you can mimic the inertia of the big generators. Okay, using these inverters. So the inverters can do a lot of control. They have a lot of control built in for reactive power. Okay, for active power generation. And then when the load, when the wind generation fluctuates, and how to maintain a constant power, how to still get the same power output. So most of these things are done by these inverters. Now, these are some key elements that we are seeing in the grids nowadays. Okay, so in the transmission and distribution, you have this outage detection, substation automation. Then you have automated analysis. You have automated VAR and voltage management, and then you are seeing this synchronous phasor measurement units coming up. You have wide area management systems. Okay, so this is what is happening in the future. Okay, so because of this synchronized phasor measurements, you will have wide area measurement systems, and then you will have solid state power electronics because of the interface to renewables. Okay, then you will have you need a continuous frequency monitoring and fault current limiter, because now you have bidirectional flow. Okay, then for the customer interface, there was smart metering, but now you are using automated meter readings. And then you have to maintain consumer portals, because now they are in control. So you need to have a portal where they can select which loads have to be on and which have to be off. Okay, and then in the energy generation and storage, you have distributed generator resources. Okay, you have their interfaces, you have ultra capacitors, and then emerging in the future is underground energy storage, flywheels, And then for the energy delivery, you already had the cables, you have transmission lines laid out, you have underground transmissions. But now, what is coming in, emerging in the future, is the multi-phase transmission. Okay. What are the research needs of smart grid? So now, with all that, the research need is in demand response. So as I told you, the customers will have the control. So you can use the demand response for peak shaving, and you can shift the load. You can shift the entire load during a time when it is not peak. Okay. And so you have this demand response, then you have distributed energy resource integration. So you have a lot of challenges with that. As I told you, that with 100% renewables, you see that the transformers have to retire because they and the voltage regulators, because they are switching all the time. Okay, so you have a lot of challenges with distribution resource integration. Then you are also introducing cloud computing. Okay, so then you have so much analysis that you have to do, so you utilize cloud for that. So you can deploy everything in the cloud and you can do your analysis in that. Then because of the PMUs, you can actually utilize the measurements that are coming in, and so you can create a situational awareness. So if something goes wrong in some part, you can be aware of that, because now with the data that is coming in, you can have a visualization built up, just like the visualization using SCADA. So whatever data that comes in through SCADA, you have these in the control centers, you have these big screens laid out to visualize that data. So similarly, with PMU measurements, you cannot display the raw measurement, but I will go inside that. Yeah? And then the research need is in storage, as I told you, because you have to reduce the size. And then electric transportation. So now electric vehicles and all, you need to have a charging structure. You need to have a schedule when they can be charged and all. And then this advanced metering infrastructure. So this is yet not developed because not every place has this AMIs. Okay. And then with all this comes another problem, and that is the cybersecurity problem. Till now, everything that the analysis and everything resided inside the utility itself. Okay. And so there was no outside access. But then, with everything being deployed in either cloud or everything being done using this communication, there can be cyber attacks. Okay, so you can have someone penetrate into the system and then change some information in there, so you can have this cyber attacks. And so cyber security is another issue. Okay, and then is data networking. Okay, because you have packet losses, data packet losses, and all. So you have to deal with that inside your algorithm. So what if you have data packet loss? How will you deal with it? So these are some of the smart grid research needs, and we have seen. I mean, there have been proposals in all the directions. Okay, so how it works here is the Department of Energy and the National Science Foundation, they initiate a call for proposal, and then we submit the proposals, and that is how we fund our masters and PhD students. So I have seen proposals in all these areas, and mostly now gearing towards wide area situational awareness and electric transportation. Okay, and also cybersecurity. So these are the three main topics that are of interest here right now. Okay, so why is solar and wind so troublesome? Because if you look at their output, look at the conventional generator outputs. They are so smooth, right? So once they are on, they gave a smooth power supply. But look at a solar output; it has so much variability. Okay, and then wind is so much variable. And at nights, I mean, I've heard from utilities and ISOs that at nights they actually the power goes to negative price. So actually, the pricing is in fact negative at nights because there is so much wind generation and there is not that much load. Okay, so this is how a modern power grid will look like. Okay, and then if you look here, you have the solar power, you have everything hooked up to this control center. So you have the wind power, you have energy storage, you have houses where you have demand response. Okay, there are apartment buildings, there are hospitals which are like important loads. So these hospitals are important loads. And you have factory loads, and so there will be multidimensional communication from all of these generators and all of these loads, all the data coming into this control center. And this control, imagine the people sitting in this control center, they get so much overwhelmed with all the data that is coming in. Okay, so this is the map of US, and these are the several PMU locations from where the data is being collected. Okay, and then once the data is collected, it is concentrated. So the data from, say, some number of PMUs will be concentrated into a data concentrator. Okay, data concentrator collects all the data and collectively it sends it to the control center. Okay, so this is the data concentrator. All the yellow points here are the data concentrators, and this is where the data is being collected. Okay, so if you see, there are not many PMUs installed in some of the states. Okay, so that is why there is low observancy in all these states, and these are like low observation points. Okay, so what is big data now? So the complex nature, okay, of this system. So you saw how complex it is. It is very difficult to anticipate what the response will be in the next instant. Okay, and we have to design the controllers to mitigate those dynamic events. Okay, so there can be voltage instability, there can be frequency instability, there can be angle instability, there can be lot of oscillations in the system. And so this enormous amount of this data will help us in discovering some knowledge out of this phasor measurement units. Okay, and they will help us in extracting the behavioral pattern, okay, in a very timely manner, and they will help in protecting the critical infrastructure and to give us a good situational awareness of the system while monitoring and also providing us a visualization. Okay, so this optimistic vision that we have of making our grid secure, robust, and stable, okay, and to perform satisfactorily under small and large disturbances, okay, under adverse events, under extreme events, so there are extreme events which are like natural disasters. So there have been hurricanes here, okay, and the hurricanes have totally destroyed the entire electric system, and then things have gone into darkness. I mean, cities have gone into darkness for so many days. Okay, so these are events which are termed as extreme events. Okay, so we want something that we can do in order that once we have extreme events, how can we still bring back our electricity? Okay, so for this optimistic vision and to accept these challenges, we have to develop a good computational framework, okay, a novel computational framework to facilitate this optimistic vision. Okay, and for this, we are thinking. We have utilized this data mining, and this data mining actually what it does is it utilizes the data that is coming in, and it discovers some patterns within these data sets. Okay, and this involves, actually you need methods for that, and those methods belong to the class of artificial intelligence, machine learning, statistics, and other database analysis. Okay, so these methods that belong to these areas can help us discover the different patterns inside these data sets. Okay, so the goal of data mining process is actually to extract the information from these data sets. Okay. So the knowledge discovery in the databases can happen through selection. So first you select the data. Okay. Then you cannot use raw data because it has information which is not useful to you. Okay. So you have to pre-process the data. Then you have to transform the data so that it is useful to you. And after you have performed these three steps, then you can apply data mining, and then you can interpret and evaluate what results you get out of your data mining. Okay. So the proper term would be the discovery of knowledge. Okay. So data mining is nothing but the discovery of knowledge from the huge amount of data that is coming in. Okay. Okay. So what are our objectives? Okay. So the objectives actually are based on the events that we are seeing. Okay. So the events that we have seen is the 2003 we had a US Canada major blackout. Okay. Am I audible? Okay. So in 2003, there was a US Canada major blackout. The event start was the tripping of a generator unit in Akron, and it was followed by tripping of three lines due to trees violating the NUCS criteria. So there is the N-1 contingency criteria that was violated due to the trees. There was a generator that had tripped, and the MISO contingency assessment algorithm actually failed due to the incorrect topology that was fed in. Okay, so the topology was incorrect, and as a result, there was a loss of communication, and thus an inaccurate knowledge of the environment had caused this major blackout. Okay, so this is one thing, this is one event which we are seeing, that we had an inaccurate knowledge of our environment, and because of which we had this major blackout. Okay, the second event is when you have an overgeneration in the renewable resources, okay, which is happening, which I told you that at nights there is lot of wind, but there is not enough load. Okay, and so you have overflow on the lines in Northwest. It was reported by BPA. And if you know that if you have a lot of flow on the lines, you can create an overloading of the lines, and hence you can create you can end up into a grave situation. Okay, so this is the second event that is happening. The third event that happened is there were major events like Hurricane Katrina and Sandy, okay, where the total damage is actually exceeded 1 billion. Okay, and they did not have power for not 1 day, 2 day, not like that, but they did not have power for several months. Okay, so because of this, so this is the third event. So I told you the event which happened due to the loss of generating unit, and then there was inaccurate knowledge of the environment. There was another event where we have a problem due to the renewable sources. This third event is because of an extreme event like hurricanes. And then the fourth event is Hawaii has 100% renewable generation. And I told you that the transformers that are traditionally maintenance free in a 40-year period have to retire now every 3 months or 2 years. So you can imagine the amount of fatigue these transformers are facing. Okay. So these are some of the major events. Okay. And so what happens when you have these events? Because of these events, you have low frequency oscillations, you have power fluctuations, you have discontinuity of the supply in some cases, and you can have damage of the system equipment. Okay. So the extent of correct knowledge of an initiating event. Okay, if you can catch the event there itself, you can do several things, but it is difficult for an operator, for a human to catch it. So what we need is we need a data analysis, or we need artificial intelligence in there which can catch it automatically. Okay, so the extent of this damage you can see from the installations of solar. I mean, the solar is useful, but then you have also, it is useful only if you have it correctly monitored and you have things operating correctly with the solars. So we have 1 million solar installations in America with 8.3 megawatt in West Virginia. Okay, so West Virginia is 8.3 megawatt because it is low in West Virginia, because West Virginia is a coal state. Okay, but now the coal plants are closing. We have to install more wind and more solar in West Virginia. Okay, and there is 100 gigawatt of wind energy in America with 686 megawatt of wind in West Virginia. Okay, so what we will do with all these, because these installations, I mean, solar is there to last forever now. Wind is there to last forever now. We are not going back to coal. Okay, so that is why we have to develop novel methodologies. Okay, so what we will do is we will develop generalized data mining based monitoring strategies to detect the disturbances in our system. Okay, but we cannot monitor all of the units. And so we have to monitor only a few units in out of all the units, and we will see how we can select which units we should be monitoring. Okay, and then the events that we are talking about, there were three types of events that we saw. One is the event that is created due to the trees. Okay, so that is kind of a fault. Okay, a natural event. The second event was an extreme event which was due to the hurricanes. Okay, and then there is a third event. Okay, and the renewable sources, we can consider that also as a natural event. The third event can be due to the attacks. Okay, so when you have a cyber attack, that also creates an event and it creates oscillations. And we need to find the source of these oscillations. Otherwise, we cannot propose remedial solutions for that. We cannot control it until and unless we know where the source of these oscillations are. Okay? So, we are trying to do a knowledge discovery here. Okay? So, what is the process of knowledge discovery? I told you that you have some data, okay, out of which you do a selection of target data set, okay, and then you pre-process the data, and then after pre-processing you have this transform data. On this transform data you apply your data mining algorithms, okay, and you get some patterns. Okay, out of these patterns then you interpret, and this is where you get the knowledge. This is where you discovered the knowledge. Okay, now this is a small interesting triangle, and this triangle says that there is a lot of emphasis now on smart cities. Okay, well, these smart cities are actually using all of the technologies that we just discussed. Okay, so they will have electric vehicles, they will have smart charging, they will have smart meters, they will have demand response, and so you are creating smart cities. Okay, and these smart cities will have described as, say, microgrids. Okay, and I think Priyanka talked about microgrids a little bit. I will not go in microgrids. I'm not going in distribution system here. So these all these technologies actually are leading to a lot of cyber physical activity. Okay, and this is creating a lot of Internet of Things, and hence a lot of smart communications, and then communication of data, and then emerging technologies that are related to that data. Okay, so this is where the data analytics comes into picture. So everything that you do in a smart city, you cannot say that I deployed an electric vehicle, I deployed this smart charging platform, I deployed the demand response, I deployed renewable sources, I deployed the 4G network, and I'm done. That's where your problems start. Okay, because that is where you get a lot of data. And so you have to go into this data analytics, and you have to do a defense in depth type of analysis. You have to do a risk assessment. You have to do adaptive decision making, wherein your machine learning comes into picture. And then you have to sometimes now employ prediction along with probabilistic analysis. Okay, so if you look at this small timeline here, you can see that you have this PMU data that is coming in, okay? And these are the different times in which you are doing the analysis. Okay, so when you have it in microseconds, normally you do power quality. Okay, and then if you want to do the cascading voltage collapse stability and oscillations, that is during this 1 second frame that you do that. Okay, and then in microseconds you will do most of the power quality analysis. Demand response is actually a non real time operation. You can do it in a minute basis, you can do it in hourly basis. Okay, and then the variations of solar and wind, you have to take care of that in minute basis. Okay, and then you see that the scheduling and forecasting that comes into the hours, days, and months time frame. So that is just giving you an idea of how fast you want the response to be and how fast your algorithm should run. Okay. So now we are talking about this ever increasing energy demand. Okay, so the operator's ability to analyze this data collected, okay, and to convert it into a meaningful information is actually impeded by the size and the complexity of this database. Okay, and the sheer size of that data, the data does it is impossible for a human to do analysis with that sheer size of data that is coming in. And so the efforts that you spend in collecting the data is all negated because you are not able to do any analysis. And recently, Prime Minister Modi, he ordered that there should be lights off for a couple of minutes, and then the lights came back on after some time. Okay, so after those many minutes, you can imagine for other people, they were saying that okay, everybody sleeps at night. They usually switch off the light. What is so great about it? But drop in load, so much drop in load is hard to manage. And I was following all the emails, and I saw that it was managed very well, even though the amount of load dropped was actually more than that was anticipated. And that is because there were many humans who already knew, they knew that this event is going to occur, and that is why they took all the measures from the beginning. Everything was pre-planned. So if you have an event like this which you know from before, which you are forecasting from before, you can pre-plan that. Okay, and you have deployed so many humans inside, so much manpower there who are taking care if there is an unforeseen event over there. That you can do. But what if you encounter an event which you have not foreseen? So operator cannot take action immediately. Over there, you had operators who were taking actions because they knew what was going to happen. But here, the operator cannot take action immediately. And hence, you need to have these algorithms that take care of these things for you. Okay. And so we are using this data driven analysis to give birth to a new era of control and analysis where you do not involve operators and they intervene only if something goes wrong, okay, in these analysis. So it is now a perfect time to apply this predictive and descriptive excavation of this time series data, this multi-dimensional data, which is also dynamic and it is coming in microseconds. Okay, so the vision now we have is I cannot say all of the applications that we have done, but I will just focus on two applications as I mentioned. The one is the event, and so here I am considering a disturbance event that results in oscillations. Okay, so it can also result in cascading outages. Okay, so if you see here, this is a stable system. So if you look at this truck, it is a stable system. Now, when a disturbance happens, what happens to the truck? It gets tilted. Okay. Now, if the conditions are proper, if the road is not wet, okay, and road is not wet and the day is bright and the driver is alert, then the driver can still steer it back and bring it to the stable position. Okay, but if your road and conditions are not are such that your system goes into instability, the driver is not fully awake and the driver is not able to bring it back into a stable condition, then yes, your stability is lost. So a lot depends on this driver who looks at these conditions and takes the decisions accordingly. Okay, so we can make an unstable system stable if we have proper decisions, if we make proper use of the knowledge, if we make proper decisions with it. Okay, so this is another Northeast blackout which happened, and this actually started in a small portion, and then it spread out because the operators couldn't take decisions quickly, and so the four states actually were involved in that. Part of Canada was also involved, and so there was so much load disrupted, and so many people were affected. So these are the events that can happen, and then for the attack, I will show you how you can do an attack location, how you can determine the severity of the attack, and how critical that attack is. Okay. So the proposed framework, actually any data mining analysis that you do, okay, it will be based on the offline analysis, okay, the online model verification, and then there is the real-time prediction. So it will always have three parts. So in the offline, what you do is you have to do a training database construction, okay, and then you have severity and criticality assessment. How important is this event? You will not pay attention to all the events that come in. Okay, that will be too much. If the algorithm has to keep analyzing all the events, you need to sort out the events, and then you have to take only the severe and the most critical events. So that will be done. That you can do an offline analysis, and you can make a list of all the severe and critical elements that can happen. Okay, and then in the online, what you do is you verify and validate your database, because when you are online, you are seeing a different data. Okay, and so when you see different data, you need to verify the models that you built in the offline. Okay, and then the real-time prediction is when you use this online database and all your algorithms and you predict in real time. Okay, so it's a three-step process. Now, what are the data mining techniques and what all can you do? Okay, so first is the motif discovery. Okay, so you are seeing how frequently the patterns are occurring in your data. Okay, then the density estimation, similar to the multiple regression problem, we need to know that how dense is your data that is coming. And then the Discord discovery is the longer time series, okay, and that you have to whether you have to consider the shorter time series or the longer time series, and then where you have to partition the time series to do a clustering. So some data may be similar in manner, and so you will cluster it into similar clusters. Okay, so you will divide it into different groups. Clustering is kind of dividing into different groups. And once you have clustered the data, then you apply your learning techniques onto your data. Okay. So, do you have any questions? Because I'm not seeing anything in the chat window. I don't know if I'm missing anything. Any questions so far? I don't know if you all are following, because I can't see your expressions also.
No, Sarika, it's very well. Actually, we are listening to you.
Okay.
Yeah. It's very interesting to know the actual research things which is going on. It is very interesting to listen.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So I'm going ahead with the data mining. It involves actually 6 types of tasks. One is the anomaly detection. Okay. So whenever you have a lot of data collected, okay, then you will not use, I mean, some data is correct, but some data can be a miscommunication, or it can be, it can make no sense. Okay. So there are outliers in the data. Okay. If all the data is lying here, somewhere here, and you have something other than that, that means that you have an outlier, and so you will remove that outlier before you do any analysis. So first you detect the anomaly. Okay. Then second is the association rule learning. So you need to see how is the dependency of your different data on each other. Okay, what is the dependency? And based on that, you can do an association rule learning. Okay. Okay, so there is a question. Ajay Kumar has asked me, group the objects with same property in the same cluster. Yes, and I will go through clustering more in detail. Okay, so I will tell you how do you form the clusters. Okay, so you have clustering. You will have after association rule learning, then you do clustering. Okay, group it into similar data. Then you have the classification. Once you have the clustered data, then you will classify your event. Okay, so I will discuss this clustering classification also in detail. So you will use that clustered data for classification of your event, whether you really have an event or you don't have an event. Okay, and if you have an event, whether that event is a natural event or is it an event due to an attack. Okay, and then you do the regression analysis, and then to see how well you classified, and then you do a summary of your results. Okay, so this is the basic data mining idea. Now this is the slide where I am showing in detail about the clustering. Okay, so there are 2 types of clustering. One is the unsupervised clustering, and the other is the supervised clustering. So when you have unsupervised clustering, your task is grouping a set of objects in such a way that the objects in these objects have to fall in this cluster, then your clustering will be done automatically. Okay, so if you look at this figure over here, you will see that there are different clusters over here. Okay, so your data is actually arranged into different clusters based on this sum of squares criteria. Okay, so you define this criteria here, and all the points that belong to this criteria will get clustered in one cluster. Okay, and then you define several points of interest, and then your data will be clustered according to that. Okay, so there are also different types of different methods of clustering. Okay, and then for classification, what we are doing is, the goal is to accurately predict the target class for each instance. Okay, so once you have this clustered, now when a new data comes in, you have to classify this new data. So either it belongs to this cluster, or it belongs to this cluster, or it belongs to this cluster. So once you have clustered, then you do a classification of the new data. Okay, and this way your clusters will keep growing. Okay, so what we use normally in our research, we are using the k-means clustering, which is a simplest form of clustering, and it aims to partition the observations into k clusters, and each observation belongs to the cluster with the nearest mean. Okay, so it follows the mean of that cluster, and so this is how you will classify based on the mean of the cluster. Okay, so that is why it is called as the k-means clustering. So this is one way of clustering. Okay, and then after clustering, we have the classifiers, and for the classifiers, clustering is easier, but classification is somehow difficult. Okay, so a practical example, I have example of the power system later on where I have clustered, but then I can also give you an example of say you have several voltages. Okay, voltages at different buses. Okay, so now you have voltages coming in, and you also have uh, say you have voltages at certain buses, and then you have currents at certain buses. So you have different attributes. Okay, for each these are called as attributes. For each attributes, you will create different clusters. So if the voltage is between point say 95 and 0.96, you create one cluster. Okay, if the voltage is between 0.96 to 0.97, you create another cluster. So that is how you will represent your data, that these are the buses where the voltage is say 0.95 per unit. These are the buses where the voltage is 0.96, or these are the buses where voltage is 1, or these are the buses which has voltages about 1.05, and these are in danger. Okay, so this is how you will cluster the different buses. Okay, that's one example of the cluster. Now, for the classification, I have a non-power system example here. So the classification, first of all, you can use support vector machines. You can use k-nearest neighbor. You can use Gaussian mixture model. You can use Nye-Bayes decision tree, and you can use radial basis function. So you have different classifiers. Okay, and so I'm giving you an example of a Naive-Bayes classifier using a very simple example which is not related to power systems. Okay, so say you have this outlook. Okay, so the outlook can be it's related to the weather. Okay, so the outlook can be sunny, it can be an overcast, or it can be rainy. Okay, there's a lot of emphasis on weather. So back in India, I never looked at weather. Okay, every day the weather is the same. But after I came here, I started looking at the weather, because one day it is sunny, the other day it is rainy, the other day it is snowing. Okay, the weather is very changeable over here. So there is a lot of emphasis on weather, and people they look at the weather first and they wear clothes according to that. So every day you have to look at the weather. And my daughter is so used to that every day before she takes out her clothes, she looks at the weather and she takes out clothes according to that. So that is why there's a lot of emphasis, and so I took an example of weather. Okay, so then there is sunny, there is overcast, and there is this rainy weather. So if you have two yeses for a sunny weather, Okay. Then what is your probability that your outlook is sunny? It is a probability of 2 out of your 9 yeses. Okay. So if you see, these are 9 yeses, and so you have 2 out of 9 yeses, that probability that your weather is sunny. Okay. And this multiplied by the total number of the cases. The total number are your 14 cases. Okay. And out of which 9 can fall in yes. So you do a 2 by 9 times 9 by 14. Okay. 2 by 9 because you have 2 yeses for sunny out of this 9 yeses. And then you out of the 14 cases, there are 9 that can fall that have this yes. So you have 2 by 9 times 9 by 14. So you get a number associated with your outlook is equal to sunny, whether it will be sunny. Okay. So if you want your outlook to be sunny, if you want your temperature to be 66, so temperature has another chart similar to that, then your humidity as 90 and your wind to be true, then you have so many criteria and you will use the same type of formula and you keep going and you get a number. So this is your probability number. Okay. So that is the output of your naive Bayes classifier. So your classifier is actually predicting that the chances of all this to happen is a very low probability. Okay. So similarly, exactly same thing you can imagine in power systems where you have a voltage, you have generator angle, you have voltage angle, you have the current, and you are using all these quantities and you are coming up with a number which tells you that yes, there is an event in the system, or no, there is no event in your system. Okay. So imagine it like that. So this is what is called as the classification. Okay. So I told you about the clustering, I told you about the classification, and then this is the offline database construction. Okay. So in the offline, you are doing construction of your database. So what you did is you got the real time measurements, you did a noise reduction, you did a data pre-processing on that, and then you are doing a malicious if there is a malicious attack or malicious, so you are doing a predictive data mining here. I have not told you about this, so just leave this point out for now. So you prepared the data, and I told you about the data preparation, that you have to prepare it first. Then you have this database. Now you do an offline analysis. Okay, I told you about the offline analysis. And then you have a region-wise event assessment data mining analysis on this. So on this database, you are doing a data mining analysis. Okay. So what you are doing actually is you are clustering your regions based on your vulnerability. Okay. So when you are clustering, you say that if these are my conditions, if my voltage is this much, if my current is this much, if my angle is this much, then yes, this is my stable region. This is my stable cluster. Then you have a recovering cluster, that if my voltage is this, my current is this, then this is my recovering region. Okay. And then you have an alert region where if your voltage is a certain quantity and then your other attributes are set, then you have an alert region here. Now, once you have clustered, then you use the data mining here and you predict whether what is the state of your system. Okay. So this is once you have the phasor measurements, we created this database called RMU. Okay. So this database actually, not to overwhelm you with these equations, but it is nothing but a collection of the data from these PMUs forms your database RMU. Okay. And then this 0 or 1 tells you whether you have an event in your system or you don't have an event in your system. So like that, you will have several collection of data you will create a lot of events in your system, and for every event you will say that, okay, this is, if this happens, then there is an event here. If this happens, there is an event here. If this happens, then there is an event here. So you create, in the offline, you actually create a database of events. Okay. And so you also create, not only you create the database of events, but you also create a database of attacks. Okay. Because at the end you want to know that whether your event is an attack or not. Okay. So you also create a database of attacks. So what we do is, once we have the database, okay, so I showed you that when we have the database, once we have the database, we do a data pre-processing. Okay. So once we have the database, we are doing a data pre-processing. And so, I think I skipped this slide. Okay. So once we have this database, then we do a data pre-processing, and this pre-processing is nothing but what you are doing is you are discretizing your data. Okay. So you have this continuous data that is coming in. Okay. Now you cannot deal with this continuous data. You have to discretize this data before it can be useful to you. Okay. So you have different types of discretization methods. So you have the discrete Fourier transform, you have the discrete wavelet translation, you have singular value decomposition, and you have the symbolic aggregate approximation. Okay. So what we are doing here is we are using the symbolic aggregate approximation, because we saw that that is the most accurate, and that is the one with, okay, and it was more accurate also. So in this one, you have to declare how many grams your data will be in. So grams means that you have to declare whether it will be divided into A, B, C, D, E, or whether it will be divided into only A, B, C, and D. Okay, and then you will not have any E's in there. Okay, so you have to define it in the form of, so you will have those many grams here. So if you see, this has 5 grams and this has 4 gram representation. Okay, so the more grams you have, the better is your data representation. But then in that case, what will happen is that you will have more computations. Okay, here you have less grams, and then you will have less amount of computation. But here your accuracy will be decreased, but here you will have more accuracy. Okay, so you are dividing this into different segments, and that is based on some numerical values. You will divide it into segments, and so your continuous data can now be represented as C, E, 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 C, like that. Okay, so you can represent it in this format, and so your entire data, so these numbers, these numbers over here are the sliding window segments. So you are using actually a sliding window to cut off your data. Okay, so the first one, you start your window here, and then you write down the entire data after that. Then the second window starts at this second point here, and then it represents from here. Then the third window starts here and represents from here. And that is why you see these blanks over here. Okay, so that is how your data has been described. Yeah, and I had left this slide, so I'll come back to this one. So what we are actually doing is we are constructing the databases. So you have one database of the data, and you have one other database for the attacks. So you have different types of attacks or events that are modeled over here. Okay. And so when you have, say, an event in the system, then if this says yes, then you go to database 2, and database 2 will tell you which type of event you have. Okay, because you have several signatures inside this database. Okay, so here you have this PMU units. So you have this continuous data. Now you are discretizing this data. You form the database after discretizing the data. Then you form these databases here. After you form the database, this is all being done in the offline. you look at if whenever you have an event, you look at the severity and criticality, whether that event is severe or not. Okay, so and any time in real time, this information is going in real time. So anytime you have an event, if it is severe, then you start looking at the event. Otherwise, you just leave it. Okay. And then in the online database, you are doing the clustering, you are dividing it into different clusters. And every time you have to do a database update. Whenever the data change, the topology change, you have to update this database. Okay. So this is the entire process. Okay. So now here we have, so we talked about, so we have this, we talked about the discretization. And so now, after the discretization, we are doing the clustering. And I told you that in clustering, what we can do is we can monitor. After clustering, we know that we have to monitor only a limited number of units, because all the voltages, currents, angles, and everything is almost similar. So you combine all of those similar looking attributes into one cluster. And so out of that cluster, now you will select a representative. Okay, the centroid will become the representative. You select a representative, and now you will be looking at only that one representative. Okay. So you will look at only one representative, you will not look at the entire data. Okay. And so, yeah, so I have a question. How do we cluster data with multiple characteristics? So if you have multiple characteristics, you can normalize that data. Okay. You normalize it and then you cluster it. Okay. Does that answer your question, Ravi Kiran? So you will normalize it and then you will cluster it. And so once you are doing the clustering, then you select the okay. You don't need to look at the entire database, and you can look at just one cluster representative. I have one more question. Can we use discretization method for wind speed or optimal location? Optimal location of wind. So that is offline analysis. It has nothing to do with waveforms coming in. So if you have waveforms coming in like voltage, current, and you have to do an analysis on that whether you have an event in the system, whether there are oscillations in the system, whether the line has tripped, or where is the source location of this oscillations, or whether there is a cyber attack in the system. All those things you can do using this data mining, and for that you will have to use the discretization. But for finding the optimal location, you already I think you already take you don't need real time data. So even if you use SCADA data, I think that should be enough. If in the SCADA you whatever data you are getting, if you know the topology and you know the SCADA data, then I think you can do an optimal location based on that. You run an optimization and see where best to place your wind. So I don't know if it answers your question, Naveen. Okay, so let's come back to this. So with similar features, you group them, and this is how you are doing your clustering, and you take a cluster representative. So out of each cluster, you take cluster representative. And the clustering that we have used is the online divisive agglomerative clustering. Okay, and so once you have this clustering, you have your model construction. Okay, and then what you do is you can build your decision trees. Okay, so what happens is that once you have your cluster representatives, now you are observing them. Okay, So these cluster representatives say are for the generator angle. So if you say the generator angle is greater than this, the voltage, if it goes beyond this value, or say your current so voltage angle exceeds this value. So if you have all three conditions, so you are putting it in a tree. Okay, if everything is yes, that means yes, you have an event in your system. Okay, but this decision tree is actually changing. Okay, depending on the time. Okay, so at t is 40 seconds, if you have a decision tree, that is not the same as the decision tree at t is 60 seconds because something might have changed. Okay, so your say your loading level has changed. If your loading level changes, then your decisions for the at what angle to consider an event and all changes according to that. So that is why this is the drawback in this decision tree, in the card decision tree. It is called as the card decision tree. Okay, so this is a drawback, and to eliminate this drawback, what we do is to deal with this situation, we use a random forest classifier. Okay, and using the random forest classifier, we what we do in that, it is an ensemble learning methodology. What it means by ensemble learning is that you are using several different decision trees based on several different attributes. So you make a lot of decision trees, not one decision tree, but you make a lot of decision trees, and for each attribute you make a separate decision tree, and you get all the results from the decision trees, and then you combine them, and then you predict it whether you have the event in the system or not. Okay, so what we did is we first were using the card classification algorithm. Okay, but then we saw that there is a drawback in that, and that is why we went into the random forest classifier. Okay, so uh, so I discussed about the real-time prediction states. In the real time, you are predicting if there is a disturbance in the system. You are predicting the location where the disturbance is, and you are seeing if the disturbance is an attack. And according to that, you will take an action. Okay. So now, what are the different applications? So not only for event identification, you can use it for visualizing different catastrophic events. You can also use it for prediction of voltage instability, or you can also use it for power swings. Okay, and then you can do a post fault instability prediction. Okay, and then you can use it for classification of different voltage disturbances. So there are several things you can do. Okay, and you can also use it for prediction, next time instant prediction in your electricity market. Okay, you can use it for all that. Now I talked about attacks a lot, whether the event is an attack or whether it is a natural event. So why are we so much interested in attacks? Because there has not been one attack, but there have been several attacks. Okay, and I don't know about India, but here, if there is an attack, the utilities are so secretive about that it will not come out. The information will not come out. Okay, and so everything here is a believed attack. Okay, so if you see that the White House, there was a computer breach from a Russian hacker, it is a believed attack because nobody will confirm it. Okay, and then there was a cyber attack on the control system in Midwest ISO, but there was no loss. Then there was a cyber attack in Brazil, and there was a Stuxnet virus that everybody knows, and that was the biggest cyber attack. Okay, and so these cyber attacks, there have been several other cyber attacks which are non-power system related, and so it is very important. And because we did an event detection, we said why not use the same algorithm for attack detection, because it is the same. It is actually the same. It is also an event in the system. Only that when you have a natural event, okay, you can see that there is a correlation between the data. Okay, so when you have a natural event, say you have a line outage. Okay, so because of the line outage, you will see that following that you have the voltages and currents and everything will fall according to that. But when you have an attack, you will have, the attack can be like, say, only a data attack. So you will have one or two datas, okay, that are altered. Okay, some meter readings are altered, but everything else will not fall in place according to that. Okay, so that is actually a characteristic of an attack, that you will not have a correlation between the measurements. But in a natural event, you will see there is a correlation, and that is how you can distinguish a natural event from an attack. Okay, but we have not done this yet. But what we have done is we have built an attack database, and if we have an attack in the system, we look at that database, and if it matches, we say that yes, there is an attack. Okay, so we have done it in this way. So that is why we are using the same wide area monitoring system to also detect an attack. And there are different types of attack: the denial of service attack, data injection attack, identity spoofing attack, password pilfering attack, eavesdropping attack. And so the most common that we normally model, the most common two types of attacks is the denial of service attack and the data injection attack. Okay, so in the denial of service attack, I have given an example of the data loss attack. But in the denial of service attack, what happens is that, say, you request the data for a particular breaker, whether the breaker is open or the breaker is closed. Okay, but you do not get the information back because you had a denial of service attack. So if you don't know the breaker position, you can take irrational decisions. Okay, so that is a denial. Data injection is that some irrelevant data will be injected into your system. Okay, and when you see that data, you start taking actions based on that. Okay, so that is why the entire system can fail. So these are the major two attacks that can happen in the system. The password pilfering and all, yes, those are also attacks, but those are not related to power systems. Those are more related to the IT side. Okay, so those people who are working in IT will be working on this password pilfering, or say identity spoofing or eavesdropping. Say somebody drops into our Cisco in our WebEx and does some malicious things. I mean, they happen a lot in Zoom actually. So since everything converted to online, I am teaching using Zoom. So, but Zoom is not, I mean, it is from China, and I don't know if in India it is allowed to use Zoom, but we are using it here, and this happens a lot. I mean, eavesdropping happens a lot. So the solutions that are related to eavesdropping, password pilfering, identity spoofing, they are more on the IT side. But if there is a denial of service, if there is a data injection attack, these are more on the power system side. We have to deal with these. Okay, and we have to find solutions for these types of attacks. So this is the picture that shows you that the different attacks that can happen in the power system. And so the replay attack, the attacker transmits the valid data at a different time. And so in the replay attack, what happens is that, say you have whatever data you have, say your breaker opened at some instance of time. Okay, so what will happen in a replay attack, that open will not be, say it opened at t is 1 second, that open will be shown at t is equal to 2 seconds rather than at t is equal to 1 second. Okay, so that is a replay type of attack. So if you see here, we have a replay attack over here. Okay, and the original output signal, is here, and then because of the replay attack, your data has malfunctioned like this. And then this is another type of attack where you have the data loss attack, and because of the data loss, so actually you are seeing something like this, whereas the original data is the one in the pink. Okay, but when you have the attack, you are seeing this data over here. Okay, because those packets are not being received by you. So there are several types of attacks that somebody can do. And so whether it is an attack or a disturbance caused due to a natural event, we can detect that using this card decision tree, just like I told you. And here you are monitoring only one unit in each cluster. Okay, you are monitoring a cluster representative. You're not monitoring the entire data set. Okay, and so here the decision is being made based on how you are proceeding in your tree. So if you go from the beginning, if unit 6 delta is less than 19.28, unit 7 delta is greater than 1.47, unit 2 delta is less than minus 72.3, and so if you follow this, then the probability that you have an event in the system is less and you do not have an event in the system is more. Okay. Did somebody say anything? Okay. So there is a question that how do we know passing of cloud as is an attack or not? So the passing of cloud is an attack or not? So it is exactly this is the question that we are going to answer here. So it is the right question that passing of cloud is first of all it will be not detected as an event also, because you are looking at the severity and the criticality. Okay, so if you see that there is an event, you have to see how severe is that event. First of all, until the event is severe, you will not take any action. But if you ask me that how will you know whether it is a fault or whether it is an attack, then I told you that when you have a fault, all the other node voltages and currents and everything will confirm that it is a fault and it is not an attack. Because to create an attack where it has the effect on everything, means it has the effect on all the elements after the fault. So if you want to create an attack like this, you need to have access of the entire system, and nobody will have access of the entire system. Okay, so normally whatever attacks they are seeing, it may be an attack on one of the meters. Okay, so one of the meters can be compromised or something like that. But if you do not take action, you can have a cascading effect due to the attack. But as soon as your attack is initiated, and you can come to know. But we have not done it in this way. I told you that we created an attack database. So this is how we know that whether that event is a fault or whether it is an attack. Okay, so we match it with the offline database of attacks. So whenever these are the conditions, we say that okay, this is an attack. Okay, so can you deal with an unpredictable event like a massive quake? Yes, a massive quake, if say it starts deteriorating your power system and it starts at one particular location, then immediately you can come to know that something is wrong in this location, and automatically actions will be taken according to that. Okay, so if you if you do not have that event, if you do not have an event that relates to that quake, okay, if you do not have, say, modeled it, just like your contingency analysis. How do you do contingency analysis in transmission systems? You're using SCADA. You create different contingencies and you are ready with those. Okay, but here you have created a database. Okay, but if there is something else, it can interpret also. Okay, so if you have an artificial intelligence algorithm in there, then yes, you can interpret also that if an event that is unseen has come up, then I have to take these actions. Okay, so you can do that. So if you have a quake and you have an unseen event for which you have not trained your database for, you can still it can still detect it, and it can say that you have an event in the system. And then this algorithm is only to tell you there is an event in the system and this is the location of the event. Rest control actions, you have to design a controller for that. It is not doing any control. It is just telling you that there is an event and the oscillations that you are seeing in the system are coming because of this. Because what has happened in California, they are seeing so many oscillations due to the renewable sources, but because these oscillations are not doing anything, they are not taking care of them. They don't know where it is coming from, but they are not doing anything about it because they don't care for it. So if we give them this analysis software, then yes, they can know that, okay, this is my source of oscillation. Okay. So that is why it is important to know, because those oscillations, say if resonance occurs, then those oscillations can become bigger. Okay. They can become bigger and they can create more destruction into in your system. So that is why it is important to know when you have oscillations in the system. And what we developed here will tell you that yes, you have this event in your system, or you have oscillations, and this is the source of oscillation. Okay. So yeah, control action is possible. For that, I mean, there will be another lecture series that we have designed controllers for that. Okay. But this is more on detecting the event. Okay. So, so after you determine that there is a disturbance, so say this card decision tree, it told you that there is a disturbance in your system, then in order to locate the source of the disturbance, okay, some people are writing nice presentation, informative session. Thank you for that. And please be with me. It is already time, I think, but I will take another 10 minutes, I think, and then I will try to wrap up what I have here. Okay. First, when Priyanka told me that it's a 1.5 hour presentation, I said I cannot speak for 1.5 hours, but it seems that 1.5 hour is very less for me now. Okay. So yes. So then once you know the location, then what you do is you can look at the variance of each representatives. Okay. Wherever you see that there is a highest variation, that means that your disturbance is over there in that cluster. Now, once you have located your disturbance cluster, then the method of the next is you have located the disturbance cluster. The next is identifying within the disturbance cluster where actually is your source. Okay. And so once you have given a cluster, then you can also go till the source, but then it becomes easy for the operator because they know that, okay, they know that, okay, that this lies in this area. Okay. So to derive event detection schemes, we investigated unsupervised approaches such as PCA, ICA, and partial least squares, as well as supervised approaches like SVM and neural networks. So random forest classifier, I told you, is an ensemble learning methodology. And so now once you have this disturbance, you can look at your attack pattern database from your offline stage to see if your disturbance is actually an attack. And what you do is for using that, you have such a big database. It is not as easy as saying look in the database and you see whether it is an attack or not. You have to use algorithms for that. And for that, we use the KNN classification algorithm. Okay. And so what it does is it looks into your feature space. Okay. And it outputs the most common class or the dependent variable. Okay. So the most common class is the one which, so say you are looking at one, you located the disturbance cluster and then you feed it into your KNN classification algorithm. It uses your training samples and it looks at the most common class that is occurring in your disturbance cluster, and with that it identifies, okay, you have this type of attack in your system. Okay. Once you know the type of attack, say you came to know that, okay, it is a data injection attack at this location. Yes, you can design your controllers now. Now you know that, okay, this is the event, and at this point the operator can intervene also because they know exactly where it is, where the problem is. Okay. So how does KNN do that? It uses similarity measure to identify its neighbors, and there are different types of similarity measures. And those types of similarity measures are the Euclidean distance, the dynamic time warping, the edit distance. We used all of them, and then we selected the dynamic time warping because it had the minimum error. So now this is the power system example, and if you see here, you have several waveforms. So these are coming from different units, and we created these types of events. If you see, there are different types of events. There are attacks. There is three-phase to ground fault. there are combination of events, and so the number of instances inside the database is this much, and the number of attack instances is 2433. So this is the amount of data that we have created. Okay, and so what we do is we define these accuracy, recall, and precision to see whether what we have done is which algorithm is actually performing the best. Okay, so if you have a no fault, okay, if no fault is predicted and actually there was a no fault, that means it is a true negative. Okay, if there is a fault and you predicted a no fault, that means it is a false positive. Okay, so this is how you are rating your algorithm. So you need a rating for your algorithm, okay, whether the algorithm is good or not. So you have a no fault in your system, but your algorithm is saying that you have a fault. That means it is a false positive there. So similarly, you define true negative, really there is no fault. True positive, really there is a fault. False positive means there is no fault and you are saying there is a fault. False negative means there is a fault and you are saying that there is no fault. Okay, so like that you define as ABCD, you run several times. Okay, and you define accuracy as this formula, recall as this formula, precision as this formula. Okay, so this is how you rate your algorithm. And so based on these different qualities, now you have this oh, I'm realizing that I'm not in full screen, yeah, because I'll not be able to see the chat, I think. So if you see here, it may be small for you, but these are the different algorithms that we have tried. And if we see that all these algorithms that are at the top have a greater accuracy, they have a greater recall, and they have a greater precision. Okay, so most probably you will have the accuracy and everything is high for the random forest, the k nearest neighbor. Then you have this naive bias, which is also it is not that much, but it is comparatively okay. Okay, but if you look at this, we have this DTW with the accuracy of 90.12, precision of 91.13, and recall of 97.5. Okay, so we found the highest accuracy in our DTW, and then we have the edit distance, and then we have the Euclidean measure. So these are the different similarity measures, and we see that DTW was performing the best. And if you see here, these are the different attacks that we created, and we saw that which elements are more critical. Okay, so we are looking at the criticality and the severity of the event. How do we know the event is severe? When we have more critical elements in our system. Okay, so just like you said that a cloud came and went away, but you will not have any critical elements in that case, because cloud came and went away, that power electronics will take care of that. Okay, the power electronics equipment attached to the solar will take care of that, and you will not see that dip there. Okay, but if you have a fault, yes, you will have several several elements that will be showing the effect here, and so you can get this severity of the event. And if you see that if your line 1416 is outage, that is the most severe event in your system. Okay, so what if you have malicious data in your system? You can have an you can have an attack, but you can have the a malicious data can present itself as an attack. Okay, so if you have a malicious data in your system, then you have to use a different strategy. Okay, and I will end with this strategy here. So if you have that, then you will use a prediction. Say you have a malicious data, then that malicious data will appear as an attack. So you use a different strategy for that. And I'm not going through that strategy, but this is where it says that this is the observed and this is the predicted. So the observed is much different from this predicted values. And so you will design your algorithm in such a way that you will not use that malicious data. Okay, and I'm not going into the details of that. I had much more, but I think I will stop at this point because the other one is related to the oscillations. So we could do only the event detection part, the attack detection part. We couldn't go to the slides on oscillation. Okay, so I think we need another session for going to the oscillation part and then creating islands due to the oscillation and all. So what I'm doing is I'm going to my last slide here, and these are my transactions journal publications, and I thank you for listening to me. Any questions?
Any questions from the participants? Sarika, that was a wonderful presentation. We all loved hearing you. And we gained so much out of it. I mean, like this part where you were telling us about differentiating between a disturbance and an attack, and the